While the world watches Iran and Israel exchange missile strikes, the United Nations Security Council remains absolutely paralyzed by vetoes and political gridlock. Here's something the mainstream media won't report. There's already an alternative global peacekeeping system in the works, one that's been quietly building influence while the traditional powers struggle to maintain order. Is BRICS the future of global peacekeeping? Most people believe the United Nations is our best hope for world peace, that the Security Council with its 5 permanent members represent the pinnacle of international cooperation. But the uncomfortable truth is that we are living in the highest number of violent conflicts since World War II. 2 billion people, I say a quarter of humanity, live in active conflict zones right now. The UN system isn't just failing them. It is fundamentally broken, and it has been since it was first created. I'm going to show you concrete evidence that BRICS nations are building something entirely different, a new peacekeeping model that could reshape how the world handles conflicts. By the end of the video, you'll understand why traditional peacekeeping is obsolete, how BRICS is already implementing revolutionary alternatives, and what this means for global stability in the next decade. Let's start with what's happening right now between Iran and Israel. This isn't just regional conflict. It's an economic war on a global scale. On June 16, 2025, Iranian missiles struck Tel Aviv and Petah Tikva. Israel retaliated by hitting Tehran command centers. But here's what the media isn't telling you. This conflict has already begun to seep and crash global markets. We see that the S&P 500 has dropped over 1%. Egypt's stock market has plummeted over 7.7%. Oil prices have shot up 7% to $75 a barrel nearly in just days. Oh, and gold? How about a record high of $3,400 an ounce as investors fled to safety? But the real kicker, after all of the exchanges and retaliation, is that Iran has not used its most powerful weapon. Iran is now considering closing the Strait of Hormuz. This is the world's most critical oil choke point. I've talked about the importance of the Strait of Hormuz for the UAE's economy, which I will have here linked in another video. But suffice to say, over 21 million barrels of oil through the strait daily. I'm talking 21% of global petroleum consumption goes through this strait. And if Iran closes the Strait of Hormuz, Goldman Sachs estimates oil could hit $100 a barrel overnight. These ripple effects will be catastrophic. Transportation costs will skyrocket. Manufacturing would grind to a halt. Consumer prices would explode globally. And this can all cascade and build up to a global recession. And where's the United Nations in all this? Completely powerless to stop it. The UN Security Council was designed for a different world, a world with 5 powers calling the shots for everyone else. But today's reality is starkly different. The Security Council operates in what critics call a global ambulance, rushing the conflicts after they've already exploded and taken lives away from all of us rather than preventing them in the first place. And this core problem is structural. Any of the 5 permanent members can veto action with a single vote. This creates what diplomats call shifting alliances that paralyze the decision-making when it matters most. And during this current Iran-Israel crisis, Russia and China have different interests than the United States, United Kingdom, and France. And what do we get as a result? Complete gridlock, while people die and suffer because if they can't get out of their own way. But what's really happening behind the scenes, BRICS nations have been building an entirely different approach to global peacekeeping, one that doesn't rely on vetoes or great power politics. The 16th BRICS Summit in Kazan, Russia, in October of 2024, wasn't just another international meeting. It was a declaration of war against the current global order. And the theme from the summit says it all: strengthening multilateralism for just global development and security. BRICS expanded in 2024 to include countries like Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, and the United Arab Emirates. And if you notice, Iran is a BRICS member in conflict with Israel. But this isn't a coincidence. It's strategy. BRICS operates on 3 revolutionary pillars that the United Nations never had: political and security cooperation, economic and financial integration, and cultural people-to-people exchanges. But the breakthrough that most analysts miss here is that BRICS is not copying the UN's inherently flawed structure. They're creating something entirely new. Instead of the 5 permanent members with veto power, BRICS operates on consensus. Every nation has an equal voice. And as BRICS designed to raise the voices of global South countries for more equitable participation, now no single country can paralyze the entire system. Traditional peacekeeping fails because it ignores the economic root causes of conflict. BRICS recognizes this fundamental flaw. They're building alternative financial systems that bypass Western-dominated institutions entirely. The new development bank, for example, has already provided infrastructure financing in local currencies, which eliminates the dollar dependency that often fuels the conflicts that we see today. BRICS Clear, their independent cross-border payment system, processes transactions without going through Western banks. Countries can now trade directly, reducing the economic friction that leads to warfare. And the real game changer is we could see how BRICS promoting local currency trading between member nations has already begun to bear fruit. China and Russia have already eliminated 90% of the dollar in their bilateral trade and now conduct over $240 billion in annual trade using the Chinese yuan and the Russian ruble. This creates economic interdependence that makes war financially devastating for all parties involved. When countries have deep economic ties through local currency trading, the cost of conflict becomes prohibitive. After all, you don't attack your major trading partner. BRICS security cooperation operates on a principle the UN abandoned: peaceful resolution through diplomacy and mediation. And their approach to the Middle East crisis demonstrates this difference. While the United Nations issues toothless resolutions, BRICS has already called for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, unconditional releases of all hostages, and the full UN membership for Palestine. But they're also doing something that is truly revolutionary and actually, crazy enough, getting to the root that is driving the underlying causes of conflict. BRICS has already condemned all terrorism, regardless of the religion or nationality. And they've already emphasized that security comes through economic development, not military intervention and strong moves. Their carbon markets partnership tackles climate-related conflicts before they explode. And their geologic platform shares resources to prevent wars that are driven by appropriating them. But most importantly, BRICS is building the people-people connections through ideas like cultural exchanges, education programs, and youth engagement, because they realize that lasting peace comes from human relationships, not superficial political treaties. Critics dismiss BRICS as ineffective, but the results and evidence show otherwise. BRICS nations now represent 45% of the global population, 35% of global GDP, and their economies are growing far faster than any G7 nation can catch up with, all while mired in their own conflict. But more telling is that conflicts between the BRICS members are virtually non-existent. China and India have border disputes, but they resolve them through dialogue, not warfare. Russia and China coordinate on global issues, despite the historical tensions that are not even 50 years old. Brazil and South Africa align on development processes across different continents that align with the sustainability goals to deal with the climate crisis. And the BRICS models is creating what political scientists call positive interdependence, which means cooperation benefits everyone and conflict hurts everyone. But before I show you what this means for the future, let me ask you something. If this analysis is opening your eyes to a different perspective on global politics, hit that like button right now. It helps our content reach more people who need to understand these shifting power dynamics. And drop a comment below, even just to say hi, ask a question, or bring up a topic, because your engagement matters to help the video get seen by more viewers, and so we can all get involved in this discussion. Your participation matters in spreading these insights. But back to my point. Compare this to the UN's track record. Major powers regularly attack each other's allies. Unilateral sanctions that are illegal create economic warfare and strangle the citizens of the affected countries. Military interventions destabilize entire regions. The Iran-Israel conflict represents the old world order's death throes, traditional great power politics, unilateral sanctions, military solutions to political problems. All will be a part of the past. BRICS represents the new world order, one that relies on economic integration, consensus-based decision-making, and addressing the root causes of conflict. The choice isn't whether BRICS will replace the UN. It really is a matter of if this transition happens peacefully or through continued global instability. Early signs suggest that BRICS is winning. Over 30 countries have expressed interest in joining BRICS. The Global South increasingly looks to BRICS for leadership, not the G7. Most importantly, BRICS nations are building the infrastructure for a post-Western global order. Alternative payment systems, development banks, security cooperation frameworks, to name a few. But it isn't just about peacekeeping. It's about creating a world where conflict becomes so economically and politically impossible because cooperation is more profitable than warfare. We must abandon the notion that war is good business, because it never is. But what's your take on this? Can BRICS really replace the UN as the world's primary peacekeeping institution? Share your honest thoughts in the comments. I make sure to read every single one of them, and your perspective really adds value to my own thoughts in this discussion. The Iran-Israel crisis will end. If the Strait of Hormuz is closed, it will reopen, and oil prices will stabilize eventually. But the fundamental question remains: who will keep the peace in an increasingly multipolar world? The UN system, designed in 1945, can't handle the realities of today. BRICS, designed for the 21st century, offers a compelling alternative based on economic integration, consensus-based decision-making, and addressing the root causes of conflict. And the next decade will determine whether this transition happens smoothly or through continued global instability. The choice is ours. If you want to understand how deep this transformation goes, make sure you're subscribed, because our next video reveals how BRICS' alternative financial system could completely end the dollar's global dominance. And the implications will shock you. Thanks again for watching.